In lesson 2-6, we'll be looking at ratios and proportions. A ratio is the comparison of two numbers. The three ways to show ratios are using the word to, so we can compare two numbers by saying x to y. We're comparing x and y. We could also use two dots or semicolon, x compared to y. The last way, most common way, to compare two numbers would be as a fraction, x over y. A proportion is an equation that states that two ratios or two fractions are equal. In example 1, we'll be looking or trying to determine, do the ratios form a proportion? So if we're given two ratios, for example 4/5 and 24/30, if we want to find out if these ratios form a proportion, what we can do is put both of the ratios into simplest form, or reduce both ratios. Our first ratio, 4/5, is simplified. Our second ratio, 24/30, both 24 and 30 can be divided by 6. 6 goes into 24 4 times, and 6 goes into 30 5 times. So once we reduce the ratios, we notice that they're both the same, which means that they are in fact a proportion. In example 2, we'll be saying if these two ratios again form a proportion. So we have 0.4, 0.4 over 0.8, and then 0.7 over 1.4. Another way of determining whether these are a proportion is to cross multiply. So if we do 0.4 times 1.4, so 0.4 times 1.4, we want to see is this equal to 0.8 times 0.7. Zero 0.4 times 1.4 gives us 0.56 or 0.56. 0.8 times 0.7, well, 8 times 7 gives us 56. And remember, our answer should have two decimal spots, so that as well gives us 0.56. So these two ratios are in fact a proportion, because those two ratios are equal to each other. In our next equation, we'll be solving a proportion. So in this case, we have two fractions that are equal to each other. Because they're equal to each other, we know that this is a proportion. And what we can do is, in order to solve this, we can cross multiply. So we'll be doing n times 16, or 16n, and then we'll be going 15 times 24. So 16n equals 15 times 24. So 16n equals 15 times 24 is 360. And now we can solve our equation by dividing by 16. The 16's cross off, and we have n equals 360 divided by 16 gives us 22.5. Here's another proportion. R over 8 equals 25 over 40. As always, to solve any proportion, we'll be cross multiplying. So R times 40, or 40R, is equal to 8 times 25. 8 times 25 is 200, which equals 40R. And now we can solve our one-step equation by dividing by 40. Remember that here our two zeros cross off, and we have 20 divided by 4. So R equals 5. In our next example, we'll be solving this proportion of 6 over 14 equal to 7 over x minus 3. When we cross multiply though, we have 6 times x minus 3. This x minus 3 has to be put into parentheses. So we have 6 times x minus 3. So when we solve our equation, we'll actually have to do out the distributive property. Then we have 14 times 7. 14 times 7 gives us 98. And this equals 6x minus 18. Now we can solve our proportion by adding 18 to get 111 equals 6x. And now we can solve our one-step equation by dividing by 6. So x equals, and remember that you just have to reduce your fraction. So both of these can be reduced by 2. 2 goes into 6 3 times, and then 2, or 116 divided by 2. So we get 58. In example 4a, we'll be solving the proportion 5 over 3 equals 6 over x plus 2. So again, when we cross multiply, we have 5 times an expression. So we're going to have to put this x plus 2 in parentheses, and then we'll end up having to do out the distributive property. This equals 3 times 6, which is 18. So when we do out the distributive property, we get 5x plus 10 equals 18. We'll subtract 10 on both sides to get 5x equals 8, and now we'll divide by 5. Remember that when you get a fraction, all you have to do is reduce for me, and 8 over 5 is reduced, so our answer is that x equals 8 over 5.